As a conscious leader, old soul, you likely felt like you didn't fit in, and you saw a lot of things that should be different, or you felt needed to be different. And I'm here to tell you the reason why you didn't find belonging in the past is because you are meant to create your own spaces of belonging. You are meant to create movements that shift culture, that allow the other people that are seeing things similar to you, that are on a similar wavelength, that maybe have had similar wounds to the ones you've gone through. You are here to create spaces of belonging for those people. And this isn't about striving for more bigness to complete this mission or complete this purpose, because your nature is already bigness. Really, the way you create this movement and have aligned growth in the business is you see all the ways that you are committed to smallness on the source, self, and infrastructure level, and you allow yourself to patch or dissolve the leaks. So in this video, I will dive deeper into how to do this at the 3 levels of creation. And you'll see in the process of your work, a lot of what you're actually doing is helping people connect more to the source of who they are. And so really what that is going to require is from you and your end for you to be able to also access that truth on 3 levels of creation. And that truth, we can boil it down to love. Now, if we were to simplify love, we could consider it as reducing entropy, right? Or reducing chaos, creating coherence in all of these levels, right? Because that allows the energy to flow the way it's meant to. That allows for you to feel in alignment. That allows for there to be harmony with yourself, with the people you serve, with your creations. Okay? So who we are at our core is already love. The big thing that we want to see is how can we see the ways that we are actually striving against love? How can we see the ways that we are creating our own suffering, maybe because of past conditioning, or maybe because society tells us that, hey, there's more value in the suffering, right? In the making things hard. So here in this diagram, we have source level, self level, system level. I think a lot of us are very familiar, especially going through our journeys, about leaks at the self level, right? These can be vices, these can be habits that aren't as effective. So I'm not going to focus on that here because that's a little more obvious. What I really want to focus on are the leaks at the source level and the system level, particularly when it comes to our business. Because a big part of it is sometimes we think we're meant to do it like other people. And the reality is most of the people that you see in business, they might not have the same level of transformation that you've gone through. Like a lot of the people talking about business, talking about marketing, right? And in addition, we are all different. We're all designed in different ways. So if we ignore our unique design, if we ignore our unique purpose or mission, the magnitude of it, and we try to fit it in a box, we're going to have this feeling like, this is not really doing it for me, right? And so at the source level, the big things that we want to figure out are like, what is the movement that I'm meant to build? Like, what is the change in culture that I'm meant to have? And your human design, as well as your astrology in particular, can really help you to see this, particularly your midheaven. is going to really highlight this for you, right? And it's something that really kind of you see in the world and you're like, oh, this should be different. Like it makes more sense to do this in this way, right? And so what a lot of people are doing, I'm kind of blending the source and the system here, but what a lot of people do is they once again try to box themselves in, fit themselves into a niche, fit themselves into a category, but your movement is much bigger than that, right? And when you actually get the clarity on the movement, then you're able to see how the different things you create can actually compound each other and actually work together, right? But at the source level, we can just talk about it from an energy standpoint more so, right? When you aren't feeling as clear on the movement, it's harder for you to communicate to your person how everything connects, even though you can kind of feel it in yourself, but you don't necessarily have the language to communicate it to the person. And for yourself, there isn't that same level of clarity, which of course leads to leaks in energy, because your energy can kind of get dispersed in different ways. You can kind of get pulled from different things because you don't have that clarity on, like, okay, this is where we're meant to go. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And in addition, when we think about just our individuality, the way we're designed, the way we're meant to do things, right? I know firsthand as a projector, I've tried for so long to live in the generator way, because most of the population are generators, manifesting generators. And it wasn't until I recognized, hey, my gift is in my seeing versus my doing, right? That took such a weight off of me, because the seeing is something that I can do, that I could scale easily, because energetically it gives me energy, and it isn't something that feels hard, right? Not saying that there is an effort, but the alignment feels easy for me, right? And this is where a lot of people go wrong, is that they are trying to do business in a way that isn't necessarily how they're designed, right? And so you can feel the design in your body, but a lot of times it's helpful to have a map, and human design is a beautiful map that can help us see actually what feels best for me, for the ways that I'm designed to do this. And subconsciously, you'll actually stop yourself or slow yourself down if you're doing something in a way that it feels like the more I do this, the harder my life gets, even if I get the financial reward or some fulfillment from helping people, right? And so we want to get that alignment in design so that everything else is gets to be easier, because your gift is actually the thing that naturally feels easy for you. And so it's often easy for us to overlook that and to tie ourselves and tie our value to things that are stressful or harder than they actually need to be. And so when we can get the grounding at that source level, then it makes everything else at the creation, the system level, much easier. And so I want to kind of bridge the source level with the system level by talking about the value of really getting that clarity on the movement. Because the clarity on the movement you're meant to create, right, the shift, right, how you see culture needs to shift, that'll makes it so that your offers aren't siloed things, or they aren't things that compete with each other, right? You don't have like a high ticket and a group that are competing with each other, or you don't have random launches or collaborations that don't feed into each other. What I see so much from spiritual leaders is that you might have a book, or you might have a community, or you might have a workshop you did, or you might have YouTube videos, and they all are adding value, but they're not all like compounding. Sometimes they're even competing with each other, because they aren't communicating like a clear trajectory that you're able to take your person on. And when you have that clarity on the career trajectory, your assets can work so much better for you, right? You can have a YouTube video that's not just on your YouTube channel, but maybe is in the funnel or the automation that someone gets on the thank you page after they book a call, right? You can make it so that when someone completes this lead magnet, you guide them towards this other offer. Or when someone completes this offer, you guide them towards this other thing. Not as something that is forcing them to stay in your world, but it can often be something that they are excited about this next level, right? They are excited, like, whoa, this should be really cool to grow in this way together. And when you have the grounding and the clarity on the movement, right, you're then able to have that trajectory make sense, which at the higher level, of course, can be helpful for people, but at the entry level, it can do so much for building trust and building that scaffolding for your person to come into your world. Because I see so many leaders, especially spiritual leaders, especially people that are really great at organic content, where you're getting a ton of leads, you're getting a ton of engagement, but you're not actually having the right level of communication or the right trajectory that helps more of those people move forward, helps more of those people get the level of help that you want. Or it feels like everything needs to be like an exchange of like one-on-one energy or your time, and you're not able to really scale the transformation in a way that's most helpful to your energy. Okay, so that's something that is super, super key once you're able to really dial in, okay, this is the movement that we want to create. And so what this really allows you to create, also with the clarity on the movement, is the clarity on the messaging, right? The messaging of the offers, right? A lot of the time, spiritual leaders, they are communicating their thing in a vague way, in an unclear way, and I get it because it encompasses a lot, right? You're moving towards things that go beyond words. But when you're able to communicate a point A to point B of a trajectory, it's much easier for someone to understand and to want to be a part of that because there's a natural momentum, right? And so some of the things that we were speaking about before were, how do we help the flow of energy that wants to go from source level to the creation level? And one of the big things that often gets overlooked is the actual infrastructure level, right? So a lot of spiritual leaders, visionaries, they're really devoted to their work. You're probably really devoted to your work, but a lot of that devotion shows up in the messaging, right? Sharing your messages online, or shows up in the actual communication, right? The one-on-one communication with your person. But we also want to give the same love to the infrastructure that holds it all together, that's holding that flow of energy, right? And if we think about love as reducing entropy, we want to see, where are we settling for chaos, inefficiency, lack of coherence in our business, right? Whether it's in the messaging, whether it's in, having a ton of people come through wanting your help and not really having the system that allows them to be helped in the right way, allows them to move forward, allows them to make the progress that we want them to make, right? As a whole, we can raise our standards, right? That's a part of this love, is raising our standards, seeing, hey, we don't need to make this harder for ourselves than it needs to be. And we don't need to make, just the process of business harder than it needs to be. And what a lot of people do as a way to, sort of create momentum in the business is they focus on, let me add more. That often will seem like the solution. But before adding more, you really want to get grounded in what is leaking, right? Where is the communication dropping off? Where is the messaging unclear? Where is there lack of leadership as far as helping people know where to go, or helping people know where you are going, or where the trajectory is taking them, right? And this is not something that really needs to be super overcomplicated. It comes down to essentially how many people are getting in contact with the messaging, and how many people are we helping to move forward, right? And obviously there's different things that can be done in that process, but a core thing is really just knowing the numbers, knowing how people are responding to things, seeing if the messaging is clear, right? Just those like foundational simple things. And that allows you to make grounded decisions, right? A lot of the times spiritual leaders, they're avoiding really looking at the numbers of the business. And I'm not just talking about money. I mean like how much energy, how many people are flowing through, right? And so you're making decisions that aren't actually really grounded in the feedback that you are getting, right? Of course, you can be really intuitive and you can have some insight there, but often we can make things harder and more chaotic by adding more chaos instead of patching the gaps and helping these things connect together. And this is so important because we're here to play big. Like, we're here to play big, not just on an internal level, but also on the level of our business. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you scale to the moon, but it does mean that you just have standards of doing things that allow for a lot of coherence in your business. And so the big thing that we want to do is just be able to see where it's leaking, right? Either at the source level, at the self level, or at the infrastructure level. So if that feels aligned to you, you'll see below this video where you can submit a form for an audit, where we will start off really looking at the leaks in the system level, but then we will also be able to go further and look at leaks at the source and self level if there is alignment for us to go deeper. And this will set you up to really create even more coherence at all three levels. And this will set you up to really create even more coherence at all three levels of creation.